This distinction between who I am and whose I am is so subtle and yet so very profound. Often, when asked, "Who am I?" individuals will put out pieces of identity that can characterize our human nature for those who are asking. We offer a first and perhaps a last name, an occupation, our relationships with others, wife, parent, son, friend. Maybe we describe our likes and dislikes, the city that we call home, or the stars that were aligned in a certain pattern when we were born. Some people might refer to themselves as part of a religious group or a fan of a certain sports team. There are endless ways of being able to describe the question, who am I? And yet, when asked with the pronoun whose, the question is turned on its head, and instead of asking about one's identity, we ask about one's belonging. Grammatically, who is a subject pronoun. It is used to identify a person or specify which person did something, who did something. Whose is a possessive pronoun. It is used to refer to which person something, or in this case, someone, belongs to. So who are you requests an identity, but whose are you requests belonging. I might still give the exact same answers, but the focus will shift when I'm answering these questions. Who am I? My name is Danielle. Whose am I? I belong to the Weber family. Bev and Jeff are my parents. Mel and Pat are my grandparents. My grandfather was the eldest of 7. This is the Weber family. It includes all of his siblings, all of their children, and their children's children. And now the beginnings of a 4th generation of Webers have started. We gather every 5 or so years to catch up and celebrate with one another. Who am I? I am a Unitarian Universalist minister. Whose am I? Being a minister in this faith means that I am part of a group of colleagues that help me to remember and discover my highest self, and helping me to navigate what it means to be a member of clergy in Canada and what our faith has to offer this country. Who am I? I am married to Adam Weber. Whose am I? Adam Weber is my partner in life. We have decided to overcome and celebrate what this world has for us together, supporting one another through the challenges and reminding each other of our strengths. Adam is my best friend, my confidant, and my hero. Let me tell you some more about whose I am. I don't hold much belonging with my astrological sign, which is Aquarius, nor with a sports team, although many people from my family would claim Rough Rider fandom, having grown up from the prairies. I call Calgary the city of my heart, but now I live in and call West Bank and Kelowna my home. I do put a lot of value on my religious identity, as well as being a crafter and more specifically a knitter. Belonging to these groups have contributed vastly to my identity, and I would not be the person I am today if it were not for these groups of belonging. I spoke here a few weeks ago about my theology of relationships. Perhaps you will remember the image of two people holding hands made out of pipe cleaners. Our identities, my personal identity, is being wrapped up and intertwined within our relationships, has long been an important part of my theology and my understanding of the sacred. I want to share just a tiny recap from my service a couple of weeks ago. When I was in seminary, one of the art projects / assignments that we were asked to do was to take home several pipe cleaners and create an image that for us would reflect God, spirit of life, the more ultimate reality. To create God out of pipe cleaners. I grew up Unitarian and in a fellowship church. I listened to stories of Jesus and God like a fairy tale, and I learned some of the stories from the Bible. As I learned some of the stories from the Bible, they held the same symbolism of love and morals that Winnie the Pooh stories held. I believe that God is relationship, a verb, the concept that holds my moral obligation is relationships. This to me is what it means to be part of the interdependent web of existence, because I do not exist unless I am in relationship to other things. Whether it is my individual relationship with each of you, or the special relationship, the congregational relationship that is here on the Zoom screen together and apart, or the relationship that I have with myself, or the earth, or animals, the relationship, that essence, it is what I find the most important. And while trying to understand how I was going to make an image of relationship, the concept of God for my assignment, I created two people holding hands to show the space between them, the relationship that I see as God. You see, my belonging, my relationship with others, with myself, with the wider world, is all part of my understanding of the divine. The God that interweaves itself through our lives. That is the verb, God as verb and not pronoun. The active part of my being and doing is intricately connected to my belonging. It can only be defined by relating. Whose I am, therefore, necessarily leads to this statement, whose are we? And when we have many different levels of our human being, many different areas from which we belong, then how do we belong completely and wholly together? Researcher and social scientist Brené Brown offers a really interesting perspective on this. She states that belonging is the innate human desire to be part of something larger than us. Because this yearning is so primal, we often try to acquire it by fitting in and by seeking approval, which are not only a hollow substitute for belonging, but they can often become barriers to belonging. Because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic selves, our imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. Brené Brown goes on to say that true belonging is a spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. This is a funny juxtaposition, but let's break it down just for a minute. The person who is willing to brave the wilderness of being alone, braving the wilderness of being alone, will then know the fullest form of belonging to others. I'm not sure about you, but this feels really accurate to me. I have never felt more at ease with myself and those around me than when I am not trying to hide my flaws. Which sounds weird because that's actually exactly what we usually do. Hide our flaws, withdraw from challenging situations, and don't share the embarrassing stuff. Don't talk about how you are struggling or why you are sad or angry or burnt out. We are all told to keep everything together, to show off our best selves, to answer, "I'm fine, it's okay," when someone else asks us how we are doing. And yet, this has brought us further apart from those around us. Let me try and share in a different way. There is a wisdom tale from one of the Tapestry of Faith curricula written by Unitarian Universalists across the continent. And it talks about a prince who is looking for new land to conquer. He's far away from home and he sees a castle that is glistening in the sun on top of a hill. He climbs the hill to see the castle more precisely, and he finds a beautiful princess and instantly falls in love. As he tries to win her affection, he brings out his soldiers and his armies, but the princess denies him. So he leaves them behind and comes back, riding his horse alone. But she denies him once more. He comes back without his horse and his sword. He leaves his sword behind, but once again, denied. It isn't until the prince comes without any of his armor, without any of his protection, but just as his true self, that love will actually flourish. Brené Brown argues that it is not until we are able to let go of all of our armor, our need for control, our perfectionism, our humor in uncomfortable silences, let go of all of those barriers and truly listen to the wilderness within ourselves, then we can truly get together and to belong. When I let down all of my guards and you let down all of your guards, and we can meet one another in each other's presence, that is truly divine. But how do we take this out into the larger community? Peter Block articulates an answer for us. This comes from his book called Community: The Structure of Belonging. And Block articulates that most of society's communities are fragmented and they're at odds within themselves. Each entity within a community, the businesses, the social services, the citizens, and even the public sector, are all in their own silos, each arguing for their own interests. He argues that by bringing people together to talk about the struggles that they're facing, to talk about the things that are not working for them and for their families, this is how we have the capacity to fix the capability of fixing our own silos, of tearing down our barriers and finding the supports that we need to create belonging within our neighborhoods. Peter Block and the work that he did in neighborhood design was very influential for me while I was working on my thesis on community engagement. Bringing together organizations that have different needs and different assets allows for more collaboration and more sustainability. When communities and neighborhoods communicate with one another and we bring our whole, needy, lonely selves to the table, we can create better together. We can collaborate on more and become sustainable. Something that I know First Toronto wants to do when they get into their new building, connect with the community around them. One more way to look at this concept is through the words of Rachel Naomi Remen. She states, perhaps the most important thing we bring to another person is the silence in us. Not the sort of silence that is filled with unspoken criticism or hard withdrawal. The sort of silence that is a place of refuge, of rest, of acceptance of someone as they are. We are all hungry for this silence. It is hard to find. In its presence, we can remember something beyond the moment, a strength on which to build a life. Silence is a place of great power, healing, and belonging. Have an imaginative moment with me. Think about a time when you tried to keep a secret from someone. It doesn't have to be in a malicious way. I mean, it could be in a malicious way, but it doesn't have to be. Perhaps it is a birthday present, or maybe a surprise party. Perhaps you spent your money on something and your partner wouldn't approve of it and you don't want to tell them. Maybe it was a secret from one person. Maybe it was a secret from the world. Can you remember the discomfort that sat in the pit of your stomach when you were made aware of the withheld information? Sometimes we are excited about secrets. Often we are not. For me, the discomfort feels overwhelming at times. So I find ways to distract myself, to soothe myself, to hide my knowledge over the other person. Now, think of a time when you have told somebody something that you have been keeping secret. A truth that you were not sharing, that you withheld, but were finally ready to reveal. For me, my stomach unclenches and the weight is dropped. Truth out in the open, made public. The sense of relief is palpable. To put the secret out in the room and to be freed from the burden of holding so much feels liberating. I think this can be for a secret that is malicious and a secret that is not. To put the secret out in the room, opening up, accepting the wilderness within ourselves allows us to find belonging without. In one way, this is perhaps what therapy can look like, being given the silence to be able to find ourselves. Or perhaps being given the silence so that we can roam ourselves, to figure out that we belong. When we are able to figure out who we are, when we are able to find our identities and discover our truth, we belong. As we lean forward into our belonging, our identities, I wonder, how will you make space for other people to belong? How will your leaning into your own sense of belonging allow other people to find theirs? If my sharing from the pulpit gives you permission to share your own experiences, then perhaps you could offer the same permission to other people. When I focus on whose I am rather than who I am able to find more commonality. I'm able to discover my belonging. And perhaps if we can all do this, we will be able to grow in community. And so I invite you to begin to ponder, whose are you? Thank you.